We just want to say thank you so much for joining this event today, this afternoon. We're really excited to have you and to speak to you more about how Black History Month and economics work together. So, my name is Hilary, and I'm a TBEN ambassador. TBEN is one of the organizations which is collaborating on this event. So, I'll let you know a bit about what TBEN is and what we do. TBEN is an organization for Black economists. It's supposed to not only support current economists, as in working adult Black economists, but also students, university students, or even students younger than that who are interested in being economists, working in the field at some stage in their lives. And it's a really integral space. It's about building community within, like, the community, but also making sure that there's opportunities provided to students who want to become economists and they've got the adequate resources to excel in the job that they want to do. So that is what TBEN does, and I've been an ambassador for them for the past few months. We've already hosted another Black History Month event this month, last week, and this one is more targeted to you guys as students. So students who haven't yet been to university, we really just want you to get an insight into what life as an economist could be like, as clearly you are interested in that. So I'm going to pass on to Ilham, who will be talking more about Discover Economics, who is hosting the event with us.
Hi, my name's Ilham. I'm also a T-Ben ambassador. I've been ambassador also with Hillary for the past few months. And just to shed light a bit on what amazing work Discover Economic does. So Discover Economics is a campaign led by the Royal Economic Society, which aims to broaden the appeal of economics to potential students, change their perception of economics and economists, and attract more students from underrepresented groups. And these are people like women, state school students, further education, college students, and ethnic minorities to just essentially limit and polarize the gap between these students. And yeah, so we have a lot of things planned for today's event. It's in collaboration with T-Ben as well, like Hillary shortly said, but we have guest speakers. So we also have Joseph and
Joseph
Chris.
will be speaking to you guys later on, which we're really excited for. It's going to be a really exciting opportunity for you guys to hear, not just from us as students, but hear from actual economists who have, graduated. We're currently still students. So maybe halfway there, not all the way. Um, and yeah, again, I said earlier, if some of you weren't in the call at the moment, you may have missed it, but the chat function is there for any questions, especially during the panel. We'd really love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to put questions to the panel when that part arrives. But before that, we're going to be opening up a poll. It's just good to get a bit of an understanding about your journey with economics. We would love you to answer all of the questions. It's a really short one, only a couple of minutes. So feel free to answer that. We'll leave it up for the next 2 minutes. So if it popped up on your screen, there should be two questions. One about your current role as, student or professional, and the second one is more personal. So your views on the industry. Do you feel like there's economists out there that look like you? So we'll leave that up for a few more minutes. But feel free to answer honestly. We'd really love to hear your thoughts. Okay. I think we've left enough time for people to engage with the poll. If not, you can quickly fill it in whilst we're talking through this next bit. Me and Ilham did mention earlier that we are students. So we would actually like to talk to you a bit about what we do, who we are, why we're here today. So I don't know if Ilma would like to start or if I should start.
Oh, I don't mind going first.
Okay.
Um, so I am a final year economics of management student at the University of Sussex. And honestly, my journey to economics is quite, it's not the conventional route. So I studied, I was first introduced to economics at sixth form. So initially, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to a state school growing up and I was just really confused at the time. There wasn't really much insight into career options. I just knew that there's a certain skill set that I'm currently working with, and I just wanted to work around that essentially. So do subjects that essentially complements my skill set and potentially give me like a wide variety so that I can have quite a bit to go into in the future. And honestly, like that's one decision I never regretted. Honestly, like I did economics at A levels and I loved it, and I continued it at university and um now that I'm in my final year, I think things are quite different, but honestly, it's quite a well-ranged, diverse subject, and especially since I do a joint honours, there's more and more different aspects that commune and just make this subject more amazing and just more tolerable as well at the same time. But yeah, let me just give you a brief insight into the T-Ben brand ambassador's internship that I did this summer. So it was an intensive 6-week internship. We did 3 rotations at the Bank of England, Deloitte, and Resolution Foundation, which is an economics think tank. And we just really saw the full 180 span of how our knowledge in economics really impacts this world and how we can really have a direct impact into different careers and different ventures and just the wide variety because it's very, very wide. I think economics is one of the greatest subjects ever. Quite biased, but I think you can just go into so many different divisions and the skill set you attain is just insane. But yeah, like it's just been great. During the internship, we hosted 2 Black History Month events. We've been working on a range of different projects, and honestly, it's been amazing. And I would recommend anybody and everybody to sign up.
Yeah, 100%. I second that completely. Like, we had a great opportunity to just learn so much about the field. Like, I'm like Ilham, I'm a joint honors student. And to talk a bit about my journey, I went into A levels thinking I was going to do, I think at the time, English, sociology, art, and French. So in no way, shape, or form was I ever thinking about doing economics. I hated maths. To be honest, I still do. I'm not the most mathematical person, but I think the thing that kind of pushed me actually to take economics, which isn't doesn't always work, but my dad must have sat me down at the time and said, "This is your last stage of free education in your life. What do you want to learn that you feel like you won't be able to learn outside of the classroom?" And for me, I always used to like watch the news, but I never understood what was going on when they talked about like the economy. So I said, okay, fine. Let me just do it and see. I'll probably just drop out. And the first year was really difficult for me, actually. I really struggled with economics in my first year. But my second year, I had the most amazing teacher. I actually found out that I really, really loved the course. So what I ended up doing was taking a joint honours in philosophy, politics, and economics. So sometimes that's referred to as PPE. And the really nice thing about that course is you're really able to kind of amend like your pathway throughout the year. So with a lot of joint honours degrees, sometimes people are concerned that they won't be able to apply to certain economist roles in the future. But with my course, you can amend your pathway throughout the years to make it more economics focused or make it more politics focused or philosophy focused, and they all complement each other really well. So I really do enjoy economics. I think for similar reasons that Ilham said, it's so broad and it's so applicable to everything that's going on in the world right now. I mean, the economy has really been going through it. So if there's any time to want to be an economist or at least understand what's going on, that would be pretty great, I feel like. And not only that, but you have to use a lot of different skills, even at university level. There's a lot of writing. There's also a lot of mathematical, numerical analysis skills. There's like a subsection of economics called econometrics, which is really about that, like making sure that you're approaching things in a statistical manner. So all of those things are really engaging, very topical, and I would highly recommend pursuing economics if you are a bit on the fence. You know, again, feel free to ask questions in the chat, but you'll definitely be getting a lot more insights into the other side of economics, not the education side, but the professional side from our panelists. And speaking of, we are about to introduce them now. So we've got two panelists for you guys who very thankfully have joined today and given their time to talk to you all, including ourselves. So we've got Crystal and Joseph, and I would like to give them the opportunity to like talk about themselves for 1 minute, give like a brief overview of their career paths, what they do, and then we'll get started with the questions. So I don't know who would
I,
like to go first.
I can go first, Hillary, if you want.
Okay, amazing.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Crystal Bird Ogbadu, and I'm an economist, but also my official title is like Economic Growth Deputy Office Director for USAID Zimbabwe. USAID is United States Agency for International Development. I think the equivalent in the UK is DFID. So it's like an international aid agency, basically. And so I oversee economic growth programs and use economics in the work that I do. And I have like a little bit of a non-traditional economics path, kind of like what Ilhan described a little bit. Because when I started out, I thought I was going to go to law school, which is different than in the UK, but still similar to that. I thought I was going to go to law school, but I ended up not doing that, and kind of fell into economics and really love it. I think some of the things that were touched on about really having an impact and about like being a part of decision making for the types of projects that we do and the money that we spend, because we're spending millions of dollars around the world. So for me, it's really important to have that seat at the table and to have that voice. So I won't go any further. I'll just stop there because I know we have some questions that we'll talk through a little bit more. So I'll stop there. And I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's already an incredible introduction. And Joseph, would you like to give our guests a bit of introduction into who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure thing. I hope the sound's coming through okay. So yeah, my name's Joseph Oyegoke, and I currently work as a senior economist at the Bank of England. My academic background is also yeah, economics at undergrad level, finance and economics at master's level, and I've been working as an economist for the past 7 to 8 years post uni. So giving away my age a little bit there. I also came from a sort of state school background, didn't really believe economics is a subject for someone who looked like me. But yeah, somehow I've been working in this space for quite a number of years now. My main focus is macroeconomics. I love all things macro. Sorry to all those who love micro. Yeah, I just really enjoy thinking through, I guess, sort of how the macroeconomy interacts with financial markets. Thinking through questions about, are we in a recession? Why did inflation go so high? And I guess from a sort of central Bank of England perspective, thinking through how developments in the economy influenced policy decision making as it relates to interest rates. So that's just a very brief summary, but of course can expand later on.
Yeah, amazing, exceptional even. And actually, one quick question I want to ask you is that can you explain to anyone in the meeting at the moment who doesn't know the difference between micro and macroeconomics?
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess when it comes to, I guess the best way to sort of split it in my mind is when I think of macro, I think of big picture, almost like a top-down view of the economy. So you're thinking a lot about aggregate numbers, whereas micro is more sort of bottom-up, sort of household-based, individualized decision making. So let's say, I guess, so when you think of microeconomics, you may begin to think of, I guess, individual household consumption and spending decisions, incentives, things of that nature. Whereas if you now want to view that sort of area from a macro perspective, you're looking at, okay, the UK overall, what is does consumption look like? How does that affect economic growth, so on and so forth? So yeah, more bottom up, top down is a good sort of way to sort of like differentiate between micro and macro. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that seemed very helpful because I need refreshers myself as a student who should remember. It happens. So thank you so much for that. So we're going to put the first question to you guys. I guess, Ilham, if you want to start with the first question, but we'll give you both a chance to answer.
Since this year's theme of the Black History Month is reclaiming narratives, marking the shift towards recognizing and correcting narratives of Black history culture is a theme this year, essentially. So that's what we're basing it on. Could you share an insight into any narratives you have? And I will be directing that question to Crystal first, if that's fine.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. I think for me, kind of like what I touched on before, I think it's just really important that we have diverse voices telling our story and shaping our narrative. So for me, like as it relates to the work that I do, for example, I think having me being a woman and a woman of color, like having my that voice at the table to me is very important. Like I said, we oversee like $1 million programs and we decide what communities we're going to do projects and interventions as it relates to health, education, as it relates to economic growth, supporting entrepreneurs and things like that. So for me, having that voice and having my viewpoint at the table, because I just imagine a world where it's, well, we've come a long way. Obviously, there's a lot of work to still be done, but I imagine, people making decisions at the table and there's no diversity, there's no idea about, well, how does this impact the women farmers or how does this impact the youth? Or, to me, it's just really important to be able to be at the table to shape that narrative. So I don't necessarily have a specific narrative that I'm pushing, so to speak, but just to say that it's like just to have that point of view and to have that voice at the table to me is just really critical for us. So I think that's why it's like so important to have like more and more people of color or like Black economists in the field all over the world. So I'll stop there.
That's amazing. Even myself, I feel like when I was initially first getting into it, I was very scared initially, honestly, because I've genuinely never seen someone from my background or someone as equally represented as me in these industries. And especially as you go more and more corporate and you go more and more into the corporate and finance world. But I was wondering, in your early stage of career, did you ever go through like an imposter syndrome, or like how was it when it's essentially basically you being the only face of diversity, if there was ever a case of you being the face of diversity in the room, but how would you essentially go about that?
So for me, I really think that's a great question, by the way. But for me, interestingly, so in my career path, I started out not focused on economic growth programs, but I focused on like grant management and contract management. But as I went through my career and got into more of the economist role, interestingly, like I got connected to the Sadie Collective, which is kind of similar to T-Ban a little bit, but it's like U.S. focused a bit. And so it's a big network of like women economists. And I did struggle with imposter syndrome because it was always like, people didn't outright say like, oh, you don't belong here or you don't know what you're talking about. But it was kind of that feeling when I was at the table and kind of giving my voice. So a lot of times leaning back into the Sadie Collective, I had like a mentor network there of like a lot of women that were in this field and like very prominent in the field that I could tap into and say, hey, what do you think about this or that? I think that kind of helped shape me a little bit, and I got like more confident as time went on. So I think having those kind of networks that I didn't even know it had existed. And when I tapped into it, I was like, oh my God, this is like, mind blowing to be around this group of women that are like all in this field and, contributing and things like that. So for me, the imposter syndrome, I feel like kind of went away over time, so to speak. And I mean, obviously it creeps up at sometimes like over time. But for me, I think having that network to lean into, I think was really important for me. So yeah, I'll stop there. But thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was really great. And I wonder, Joseph, like in your perspective, do you have any like similar like reflections? What was reclaiming narratives like for you? And for the second question, actually, like how did you find like entering the Bank of England, quite a like, historical, prestigious organization? Did you feel like you had to like battle a certain narrative against you whilst you started out?
Yeah, sure. Happy to answer those questions. Shout out to the person who asked the question in the Q&A about whether I could be the first Black baby governor. All I say is we'll see. We'll see. Watch the space. But yeah, basically, I guess in terms of the theme of reclaiming narratives, yeah, I think one of the things that jumps out to me, I guess from a sort of economics lens, is that you probably have to think pretty hard to think of like a prominent Black economist. it's not something that is readily taught when it comes to either A level, or undergraduate or postgraduate level. You hear of certain key figures as it relates to maybe people who have shaped economic thought, let's say in the UK, for example, as you learn about different models, like most people who do economics at A level would know John Maynard Keynes, for example. But you don't really hear black economists. And so when I was thinking through the theme of reclaiming narratives and sort of like correcting that narratives of black history and culture, what jumped to mind was I would love to see more respect put on the likes of a Arthur Lewis, who was a prominent black economist. And it's one of those things where, yes, I think of all the Nobel Prize winners, again, Nobel Prize awards given to people who make significant contributions in particular areas and within like social sciences and other areas, I think he's the only black person to win Nobel Prize within this field of economics. So that's like mind blowing. But when you consider the sort of barriers when it comes to undertaking things like research and stuff like that, it makes that achievement all the more impressive. And I feel like because we don't consider the fact that not everyone has equal access or opportunities to make an impact in the field, I would love for more respect to be put on his name for the things he had to surmount to even undertake that research. And as we could begin to sort of dismantle barriers, I'd love to see more people, and actually for it not to be so uncommon to see black economists who are heavily influential in the field of research and analysis, and people being acknowledged for the work that they're ultimately doing. So shining a light on figures like him and sort of like raising their profiles, that's something I'd like to see when I think of reclaiming narratives. I think the second question was about, I guess, also like imposter syndrome, but as it relates to working at the Bank of England. Great question. So I think it's fair to say that, there are not many people who look like me, and that's for a variety of reasons. But I do feel like when you go all the way back through the pipeline, there are not many black people studying economics, full stop. So there is a pipeline issue as it relates to that. But I think when you think of the other end, someone mentioned, Bank of England governor. If you think of one of the executive committees, which is the Monetary Policy Committee, and they're the ones who basically set interest rates, no one there looks like me. I don't see anyone there who is black. And actually, not very recently, we have a minority ethnic woman who's part of the committee, but that speaks volumes, because if people see that as the face of the bank, then you're going to think, well, can I really work there if no one there looks like me? I think historically also, the bank is typically recruited from, maybe people who go to private schools, Oxford and Cambridge. Economics is seen as a very sort of middle class white male subject as well. You're much more likely to study it, and you must have more the availability and opportunity to study it if you go to a private school than a state school, for example. And that obviously has a knock-on effect for those who are in the industry. So I give all that background to say that, I had insane imposter syndrome, thinking, I don't belong. Do I need to change the way that I speak? So I think a term called code switching, that was the name of the game for me. At home, talking with my parents or siblings, I'll be more relaxed, just do my thing. I even throw in a Nigerian accent here and there. When it came to the office, it was Queen's English, and so I couldn't be myself. And so when you're not yourself, you're sort of anxious about how you're going to be perceived. And because I didn't come from the same backgrounds as well, i.e. middle class, private school, Oxford to Cambridge, the thought also was that maybe I'm not good enough, or what am I doing here? At some stage, I'll be exposed for the fraud that I am, sort of thing. And I think that's an ongoing battle, especially in an institution that's quite hierarchical, like the Bank of England. But I think at the very same time, it's good to have a good support system around you to remind you of the accomplishments that you've been able to undertake, and that where you have ultimately gotten to is entirely on merit. But I also think that those with imposter syndrome, it can be a good thing, because it means that you don't have a sense of entitlement. If anything, you double check and triple check the work you're doing to ensure that it's accurate, or you're conscious of the areas that you're not as strong in. So I think it could be helpful in terms of making you more well-rounded, more diligent and rigorous in your work. And And I think you want to embrace that to ensure that, yeah, you can be the best economist or whatever other role, the best you can be in whatever place you find yourself in. Yeah, I'll stop there because I've gone on quite a bit.
That was great. Thank you so much for those insights. And I think they're definitely really relevant, both of the things you guys added. As you mentioned, we've actually got some questions in the Q&A box. So I think it would be nice to quickly detour. We'll do like 1 minute answers. I think the first one has been answered from a teacher. The theme of Black History Month this year is reclaiming narratives. How does this relate to economics? Do you guys feel like anyone wants to like give like a 1 minute response to that? Or
I'm happy to quickly just come in here. I think that, so again, from a teacher's perspective, and relating to economics, one thing I found going through the system is that I was always taught economics from one perspective, which is the sort of neoclassical perspective. Now, if I now define and go into the detail there, we'll be here beyond a minute. So, type on Google or ChatGPT for a summary. But I think the key thing was that if you're only taught economics from one particular angle, i.e. one school of thought, and you're not taught contrasting school of thought, so on and so forth, then the chances are you're going to have an incomplete understanding. So I was taught, okay, yeah, if the economy is weak, what you need is expansionary monetary policy, so reduce interest rates or cut taxes, and it should cause the economy to grow. But if you do that in a developing nation such as where I'm from, Nigeria or another place, it may not lead to that outcome. Why is that? Okay, you begin to think of institutions, so on and so forth. So I think, yes, it's good to teach economics in terms of the basic principles from things that maybe work or are more established in developed nations, but it's also to teach about other nations, other schools of thought as well, so people can be able to think critically through a range of topics rather than just having a sort of like Western Eurocentric approach to tackling economic issues. So that's a thought that comes to mind for me. I'll stop here owing to time.
Thank you so much. And I definitely agree. This is something I spoke about a lot as an ambassador. My view of kind of like economics subjects are very important and I'm happy I study it, but there can be kind of like a homogenization of what kind of things are taught. And I wonder for Crystal if that's the same in the US. But I'm actually going to put a question to her, or actually I don't know if Ilham would want to take the next question in the Q&A box and pose it to Crystal.
Oh, sure. In the Q&A box, someone actually
Yeah.
asked, they see the differences on the diversity issue between the US and UK.
You said the differences in diversity in the US and the UK?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of the issues that face like Black economists specifically. Do you think there's a different sort of dynamic within the industries in the US versus the UK, just from your own, or if anything, it might be nice for you to just talk about your experience in the US if you can't directly compare to the UK.
So I think we have a lot of similar issues, and I think I'm a little bit of a different case, only because I am an international economist. So I work basically in developing countries, kind of like, I know that's a controversial term, but like what Joseph touched on, I work in like countries that are trying to improve in different areas. So I don't work in a traditional setting. Like, let's say if I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, that maybe I would have that lens. But I feel like some of the issues are still the same that we grapple with. And I'll just add on to a little bit like what Joseph said, though. I think just like what he touched on, not that I necessarily have the answers, but just having those voices in the room. Because to me, hearing from the stakeholders, like if you are implementing programs in Nigeria, which I've done before, having stakeholders in the room that are like, what is going to be the most effective, what's going to work in this context, not just from like Joseph kind of said, that neoclassical way of thinking, the way we learned is going to apply here. So I'll stop there. But yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful. I think we've got a few more questions actually in the chat. We had the question about becoming the head of the Bank of England, but I can't see it anymore. It's gone. So, I mean, we could talk about that, but I guess a related question is, are there any schemes to help young Black economists get into exciting roles like you two? So that kind of leads into the next question we're going to ask you guys anyway. what were you guys' career journeys? We know both of you maybe studied at university, but if you could break down a bit more the specific roles you've had up until now. And then afterwards, if you could maybe talk about specific like schemes or programs that you guys did to gain experience. If you did, it would be really nice to hear. So I don't know who would like to go first. Maybe Crystal can go first.
Sure. Sure, I can go first. So for me, like I said earlier, I had a little bit of a non-traditional economics career path. So when I studied at a school called Marymount Manhattan College in New York City. And I did international business and economics at the time. I actually thought I was going to work on Wall Street back then. And then Wall Street or go into law school. So at that time, in the US, you have to take the LSAT to get into law school. So I didn't get the score that I wanted. And at the time, I had a mentor who was Ivy League educated all the way. And she advised me to do my master's degree and then maybe come back and do, try to pursue law school. So I ended up applying to actually come to the UK. That's kind of why it's near and dear to my heart. So I'm American, but
Oh,
I focus on a lot of issues there. So yeah, I did actually ended up doing two master's degrees. I did one in public administration, and then I did one in economic policy and finance at SOAS. So I just really loved it. And then I kind of got tuned into the career of international development. And so at that time, I came back to the US. And to kind of touch on the question somebody asked about like schemes, like I know the US is different than the UK, but I know like for the World Bank, for example, they have like young professionals program for like young economists where they hire young economists or like junior economists to kind of get into this career. But in my case, USAID, where I work, had kind of not, it wasn't a young economist program, but it's kind of like a junior international development. It's not intern, but like international development career path that I kind of applied to get into. So you kind of start off at a junior level and kind of move into this program, basically. So it's a little bit unique to the US, I guess. But again, just to answer that question, there are programs out there that one could do. But like I said, for me specifically, when I started out in this kind of junior program for USAID, I started out as a grants specialist. So I oversaw the grants that we do. So again, we give grants to different organizations to implement economic growth programs or education programs or health programs in different developing nations all over the world. So I started out doing that. Then I moved into monitoring and evaluation, and that's kind of like the projects that we do or the millions of dollars that we spend. We spend a lot of money also in monitoring those programs. So like I used to oversee efforts to monitor and evaluate and see how well those projects were going. So we did a lot of impact evaluations, randomized control trials, and things like that. So my role is kind of like as an economist, I like it's kind of a double-edged sword. I know Joseph talked about he's a macroeconomist, but mine is kind of like we kind of touch on so many things. So sometimes we focus on micro, sometimes we focus on macro, sometimes we're looking at randomized control trials or impact evaluations to see how well the projects that we're doing in Guatemala are going, for example. And then if it's not going well, are we going to tweak the project? Are we going to look at the macroeconomic situation and say, okay, this is not going well. How can we change this project to make it better, for example? So we use those skills to kind of make those tweaks along the way. And so after I did monitoring and evaluation, then I was an economist overseeing, like I said, randomized control trials specifically. And we did that in different countries all over the world. Focused on South Africa, Southern African region, I should say, and West Africa at the time. And then most recently, I am, like I said, I'm serving as the Economic Growth Deputy Office Director. It's a mouthful, but also an economist for USAID. And I'm actually based in Zimbabwe. And I'm actually really happy my connectivity is working today. So yeah, I guess I can stop there. I hope I was specific enough. And maybe Joseph can talk more about schemes maybe in the UK for
Mhm.
young economists and their economists. Or you ladies too have a lot of that insight. So I'll stop
Yeah.
there.
Thank you so much. And how cool you're working in Zimbabwe through your role. Because I imagine that a lot of students here, or even teachers or whoever might be from the diaspora or have an understanding of the diaspora. So it shows that, like, with being an economist, you do get those opportunities to travel and try different things as well. I was actually, just as Crystal said, I'll put the question to Joseph, but I also know Ilham has loads of like really great experience in like economics in terms of work experience. So it would be really cool to hear from her as well about the different things she's done. So I guess we could go to Joseph and then go to Ilham. And then maybe if I have anything else to add, I'll slip it in.
Yeah, no, sure thing. Happy to. And yeah, no, super helpful answer there, Crystal. I'll probably start by saying that my suggestions will be heavily biased to the Bank of England, given the time I've been here and the knowledge I have in terms of potential schemes. But if those in the audience are not already familiar, if you become a member of TBAN, what we do is that we circulate various opportunities to get involved in, from internships to sort of insight days. We partner with certain organizations as well, such as the bank, but also like a Frontier Economics and Economics Consultancy. So if you're not in the TBAN WhatsApp groups or subscribe to newsletter, I would encourage you to do that, because you can just get a range of things filtered through to your phone or inbox, on a regular basis. In terms of first, so my career path, and then particular schemes that are helpful. So yeah, as I mentioned, I studied economics at undergraduate level. Did at A level as well. Only because I just thought, I don't know what this is, but it seems interesting. There was something called a credit crunch going on at the time. Again, revealing my age. And I was like, what's all this? And when I was thinking about subjects to pick at A level, economics seemed to have the answers to the questions that I had about this recession that we were in, and this credit crunch that we were seemingly in as well. And I think at A level, I just fell in love with the subject. I found it super interesting, just really stimulating the mind. Had a great teacher as well, and I need to stress that having great teachers can be so influential for your career path, whether you sort of become enamored with a subject or whether you turn away from it. There can be subjects that you love, but actually because maybe you're not in the best environment, that can turn you away. So shout out all the great teachers out there, the ones that I had, helping me along the way. And so yeah, from there I knew, because of my at A level, I definitely wanted to do economics at uni. So I did the undergrads and masters both at the University of East Anglia in Norwich, and then after that, well, actually no, I did a masters because I didn't get any job offers off my undergrad, and it was really competitive pool. So I sort of fell into the masters basically. There wasn't seen the finance at the time for masters, so I had to apply for a bank loan. So I give that just to say that it wasn't like a comfortable journey. It was actually quite difficult, because I know when you come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, you may not have the access to the 25k, 30k that LSE want to do a master's there. So you just got to try and find whatever's available to you at the time. And then the bank loan I got wanted the money to be paid back straight away after the master's. So I just found any job, any job I can find. So I worked as an analyst for a regulator for about a year before I got a job in as a macroeconomist in a private sector consultancy. And then after that year there, I moved to the civil service for the Office for Budget Responsibility, which is more like fiscal policy. Then after sort of like 3 years there, I moved to the Bank of England, where I've been for the past sort of 4 years. So that means that I have a range of experiences, from fiscal policy, like tax and spending, to monetary policy, sort of interest rates. And my main focus in the bank has literally been the near term, sort of like answering questions about, like I said at the start, why has inflation risen so sharply? Why are wages so high? When will they come back to a sort of target consistent rate? I'm thinking about, are we in recession? Are we now out of recession? What is the path for GDP in the near term? So again, these are big aggregate questions. If you've done basic economics, you may know about consumption, investment, government spending, net exports are things, the components of aggregate demand. So we do a lot of analysis of those sort of things, how they're developing in the economy, and what they may mean for demand, and what that might mean for GDP, so the country's output. So I find all that super interesting, and I think it's been really relevant to think about those things over the last couple of years in the sort of economic environment we've been in. So just to stop there, I'm not going to the schemes. The bank has loads to offer, ranging from degree apprenticeships. So even if you're not looking to do just like a 3-year undergrad straight, they have degree apprenticeships where you can sort of study and work at the very same time. So I know a few people who are doing that, and it's a great way to sort of just gain experience, but also having dedicated study days. So you're sort of like learning economics, but also applying it on a day-to-day basis. If you are already in university, there are a range of internships um, available for you to apply for, and also industrial placement schemes, which is say you have a 3 year degree, but you can do 1 year in industry. The bank have provisions for that as well. Um, there's also a scheme that I really want to draw attention to, which is called the Black Future Leaders Sponsorship Program. And what this scheme basically aims at is the intersection between the fact that, yeah, they're underrepresented with Black heritage staff, but also, um, you know, trying to tackle social mobility for those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So if you meet a threshold of a household income below a particular amount and you're Black heritage, then what you can get is an internship at the Bank of England. And in addition to that, you'd get sort of like £5,000 or so towards sort of university fees and various other costs as well. So I think it's a great way to sort of address some of the, I guess, the previous, just imbalances and the barriers that Black economists or Black students have faced in the past into getting access to institutions like the Bank of England. So those are just a handful of things. But like I said, if you go on the bank's early careers website, there are numerous things you can look at. And I'll stop there owing to time. But like I said as well, if you join TB and become a member, these things will be flooding to you. So rather than looking for them, things will be coming to your inbox as well. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. And Ilham, do you want to quickly talk about any specific programs you've done? I might add in, and then we'll just, I think the best way to do it, because we're getting so many great questions, is just go through the Q&A questions until about 3 p.m.
Definitely. So just to provide a bit of context, so I'm a first generation student and I went to a school in like a very underfunded state school. So growing up, I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on, had no idea, didn't know my head from my foot. I was very confused. So I was very proactive. It started from when I was like 15. I had an idea of I didn't want to be in this space anymore. And I didn't grow up seeing many people really I lived in like a quite mundane area. It was kind of normal people. You see the same faces every day. So it was just like, now I'm going to take this massive leap of faith to kind of assert myself into this world that I'm completely foreign to. It's nothing, like nothing I know from at all. So when I did start applying, I started to look out for social mobility schemes. So one organization that really helped me was the Social Mobility Foundation. They've provided me assistance since I was like in year 10. And it's essentially a non-profit organization that helps to lessen the gap between underrepresented students and provide internships, mentoring schemes, summer opportunities, summer schooling, internships from when you're even still in secondary school, and work experience and placements. And it was amazing. Honestly, I was able to do EY in year 10, Smart Futures program. That was a year-long pilot program from when I was in year 10 till year 11, essentially. And it was amazing. Honestly, that was my first instance into the corporate world. And I didn't even know what it was, honestly. Like I was very, very bizarre. I just applied to it and I was completely surprised that they'd want someone like me. Honestly, imposter syndrome was a recurring theme. Even like I would be lying if I said till this day it wasn't happening. Because honestly, when I went to uni, um, I was the first person in my family to go to uni. So once again, that was like a complete different instance. I did not know a single thing to expect. And as well as that, I moved out. So going to study economics at uni was very like different for me because it's predominantly a white male-centric subject. So sometimes I'd be the only girl in my seminar class, and then on top of that, I'm the only black person in my seminar class, or like anyone of ethnic color, person of color. I'm sorry. But over time, I was able to do an internship in my first year, thankfully, at Schroders. And that was through the Social Mobility Foundation. And that was amazing. Honestly, I was able to do a stint in risk and compliance. And honestly, from those stepping stones, you grow. Everything becomes more easier as time goes on because what generally doesn't kill you does make you stronger. And it was difficult over time because once again, like the lack of diversity was very intense. You don't really, it's kind of like it, I don't know, it was quite intense to like discover that I had syndrome. I didn't really at the mo when it happened initially, I didn't really notice it, but then over time you kind of like figure it on and clock it on, and it's just kind of like wow. But sorry, I'm going off track here. So the Social Mobility Foundation, as well as that, I was also part of Everything Diversity and Inclusion. So that's another similar to Social Mobility Foundation, another organization that helps to lessen the underrepresented groups of people into various different fields of sorry, various different fields of employment and different divisions. And it just essentially helps students really get into these divisions and provide them with the necessary skills, internships, mentoring schemes, etc., etc. And also TBEN. TBEN was the highlight of my summer. Honestly, it was great. And I think I'm not even the same person who I started from what I started from 6 weeks before that intense internship to what I was after. Complete different individual, I personally believe, because the well-renowned, it was so renowned, and I multifaceted. Like there were so many different aspects and different projects we were working on, and it just really does help you grow as an individual and helps you realize that you are more and more capable. And the more that you generally not apply yourself, but it helps you to apply yourself to these skills and learn that you are. Wow, I didn't know, essentially, like you didn't know you were capable of doing this, but now it's coming to fruition and you see the results clear as day, and you can't
Yeah.
deny that you are capable and we are more than,
Um,
we can do it.
yeah, amazing. I'm so sorry, Ilham. I just have to cut you off quickly, just because we've got so many questions. And one thing that I'm thinking of, I would love to confirm with Anish or someone at Discover Economics, with some of these conversations and the programs recommending, if we can get that down in the list, and perhaps email it to some of the guests today, just because we are running really short on time, but we would love to share these opportunities with everybody. Again, I'm really sorry to cut you off, but we've just got so many questions in the chat. So I just want to make sure that we are finishing everything up by 3. Still got about 8 or so minutes. Hopefully we can do that, maybe run a little bit over. But you've gotten a question, or more so a statement, about the curriculum in economics. I don't know if it's showing on the screen, but yeah, it was about the ways we can adjust the curriculum. And I definitely agree with all the points that were made. Like, again, I'm from a West African background, I'm from a low socioeconomic background, state school background, etc. And I'm studying development economics at university. I've actually got a lecture in it in like an hour or so. So after I finish this, I have to go onto campus. But yeah, a lot of the things you're discussing are very important. And I think one thing that my teachers did really well in regards to like talking about economic global institutions that might be perpetuating issues for Black people across the world is making sure that there's space for that dialogue in the classroom that isn't necessarily syllabus based. I was really grateful that I got that opportunity, and I didn't have my economics teacher actually went to Cambridge and is from a traditional white middle class male background. But it is possible to integrate those things into study and pique students' curiosity. And I think if you are a student on the pool, it's also really good to think about, like if you're interested in the news or reading a bit more about what's going on around you, there's so many amazing resources. Discover Economics, I was just checking on their Instagram, have so many podcast and book recommendations on their page. I know we got another question in the Q&A about that, how we can, involve students or give them insights into the things that's going on around. And I think in the chat, I can see that we've put some links down to all of Discover Economics' different social media platforms. We've got 2 questions. One, how does economics become involved in Black History Month? And another that is, why is it important that economists are diverse? So I guess we could do one panel guest answering each question. So maybe, I don't know, who wants to answer which?
I can. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna have a go at the importance of like having diverse economists.
Okay.
I think the reason why maybe I'm particularly passionate about this question is because Um, yeah, oftentimes economists are heavily involved just when it comes to yeah um, policy and organizations where when you think of I guess countries, economists are often sort of like their expertise and knowledge is utilized and I guess it's influential when it comes to policies that are introduced, and the policies that are introduced will affect just nations. It will affect those who are poor, those who are rich. It will affect those of different ethnicities. It will affect men. It will affect women. It will affect students. It will affect adults, so on and so forth. And so, therefore, it's very important that when policies are thought of, and you're thinking about how best to stimulate the economy or how best to do X, Y, or Z, that the different demographics are taken into consideration. And if there's a failure to have, I guess, those whose expertise you're leaning on, i.e., economists, from a diverse background, it hinders your ability to, yeah, to cater to all the different subgroups within society at large, essentially. So, for example, I know the Bank of England's almost MO or mission statement is, I guess, yeah, obviously it's looking to obviously keep inflation at a low and stable target, and it's basically trying to maintain monetary and financial stability for the good of the people of the UK. But if you look at the people of the UK, it's a diverse group of people essentially, and to best serve those people, you want to have a workforce that reflects the people you're seeking to serve. So therefore, I think it's super important that the people you're seeking to serve, if you're introducing policy, you're able to take into account the different views and experiences, so that the policies you are introducing can benefit just everyone as opposed to a select few. So, for example, I think Crystal touched on this briefly. Let's say you're trying to introduce policy in in a country, but you're trying to look at a different country and borrowing like a very US-centric Western idea to introduce policy in somewhere where actually it's not suited. You're not considering the people you're serving when it comes to the policy you're introducing. So if there's a disconnect there, it can lead to worse outcomes or greater inequality, so on and so forth. But if all those people have a seat at the table and can feed it into the policy that ultimately introduce, it can hopefully lead to better outcomes. And there are actually studies that speak to or touch on the fact that greater diversity in organizations can lead to greater outcomes in terms of private sector for profitability, but also in terms of like diversity of thought and decision making in public facing organizations as well. So I'll stop there at the time. But just a few thoughts.
No, thank you. And I think honestly, we've covered both questions there. So I was just wondering if both, I know I cut off Ilham, so if she wanted to finish off anything she was saying and also give Crystal the chance to give any reflections on, the event as a whole and the things we've discussed. If both of you would like to summarize, give any thoughts or any things that you felt like you couldn't say beforehand, that would be great.
Ilhan, did you want to go? I can go first.
I just quickly need to charge my laptop, so could you go first?
Sounds good. No, I was just going to say that this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to even have been here to be with all of you. And I feel like I'm always learning. And I just want to say, I know we didn't really touch on this, but if I had to give advice to a student, I would just say follow your passion. I know that sounds cliche, but I know even as I was listening to Ilhan and how she talked about, she didn't necessarily know what she was doing, but it seems like she had the fire within her and it's like a drive to do something. So she sought out organizations and people and support networks and things like that. So for me, that's kind of like my story as well. Like I didn't necessarily have a framework or an Ivy League educated family that, had this path. So for me, following that passion, it kind of led me into economics. And now I'm doing work where it's like I'm supporting people and I'm making an impact and a difference in certain places that I work. So for me, it's really like focusing on that passion and your drive. I would give that advice to any student and also seek out mentors as you go along the way. I know we keep making shameless plugs for TBAN and other organizations like that, but like look for mentors in those kinds of places. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And yeah, just to quickly before Ilham speaks a bit more about what she was talking about earlier, I just want to re-emphasize like having a sense of self-belief, the imposter syndrome. I know we don't want to focus on it to the extent where you feel like you should feel imposter syndrome, but it can happen, and I definitely experienced that as like in terms of my personal experience. Actually, like I'm very interested in economics, but not particularly as an economist. My interest is actually like policy reporting, journalism, and like financial reporting, economic reporting. So my approach to things has also been quite challenging because sometimes it's like you're balancing like a media industry, which is very hierarchical, and then the field of economics is also as well. And then also studying at university can feel very unfamiliar, especially when you're from like a multicultural area like I was, and then I'm suddenly in like a Russell Group university, and people are just very different from what you know. But I just want to really encourage everybody and both teachers and students to be ambitious. Like I'm so thankful that I had a teacher that really believed in me, and really pushed me. He was like at the time I wanted to apply for Oxford, and he was very encouraging. And that sense of self belief sometimes has to be given to you from someone else. So for students, like advocate for yourselves. If you're applying to university, if you're applying to certain schemes, reach out to people, take up space, be a bit of a nuisance if you have to be. And for teachers, yeah, just instill like courage and curiosity in students because I've really benefited from that. Yeah, I don't know if Ilham wants to give some final thoughts, and also Joseph as well. And then that will be the end of the event. Sorry, we are running over just slightly, but hopefully we'll be done by 5 past.
No, definitely. Just one point I wanted to make is just being proactive,
Mm-hmm.
utilizing the time that you have. So if you're in the summer between year 12 to year 13 and you don't know what to do that summer, do a summer school. There's opportunities out there for you to grasp and maximize on. There's free summer schooling at universities, and there's more and more opportunities. And these will really widen and gauge your um thought of mind and really introduce you to diverse institutions and like just really broaden your horizon and just make the most out of it. And at the end of the day, this is your life, your journey. Just make the most out of it. Continue, try, aim to learn and maximize and just be the best person that you could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully with time, everything does come into fruition and all great things comes blessings and, prosperity and all be well.
Yeah,
But
amazing.
yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Very positive. Like we need to hear some positivity. So that's great because there is so many opportunities out there for all of you. Um, I don't know if Joseph wants to give some final thoughts, and then we have um, the final poll, and then we'll let all of you go.
Not too much more to add apart from to co-sign what Crystal and Ilham said. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
network. Add all of us on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform.
Yeah,
Follow T-Ben. Even if you feel you're being a nuisance, yeah, absolutely do that. That's how we get opportunities,
yeah,
and broaden our insights. Essentially, be inquisitive. Ask loads of questions. Don't worry about asking silly questions. In
mm-hmm.
asking questions, that's how you learn and you develop as well. So, yeah, what everyone else said, just times 10. Thanks a lot.
100, 1,000,000%. And that's one final thing I want to say before we go into the poll. LinkedIn is such a valuable resource. I think I got onto that in year 12. And I honestly do believe that, like, because of LinkedIn, I followed T-Ben on Twitter out of all places. And then I ended up becoming a T-Ben ambassador through that. You find out so many different things. I think I'd messaged the head of T-Ben, Felicia, like 3 years ago on LinkedIn. So it shows you that like getting and connecting with people, like it does pay off. There's so many things on there. I know it's really daunting at the beginning, but there's loads of LinkedIn like one-on-ones. Even on TikTok now, there's a lot of opportunities. It kind of shows you how to like set up your account. So please like make a LinkedIn account and connect with all of us. We'd love to speak to you further if you want that. And yeah, I think we'll end off on the poll just to kind of get a great sense of how you guys felt about the event. So it will come up on your screen shortly. Um, but thank you so much for joining. 1 second. I think the poll will come up soon. Yeah, there we go. So it's just a very brief 3-question poll just about your experience today on the event. And whilst the poll is still going, I just want to thank our guests and Discover Economics for hosting this event with us. Honestly, it was such an amazing experience. Like getting to hear these like really like qualitative um answers. It's very rare actually that you get to hear from economists, and I've really struggled with that, like trying to get insights from people who are in the field. So it is really valuable and we really appreciate it. So we just want to thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you. Okay. I think in that case, I think most people will be done with the poll. So I don't know if Ilham has any final thoughts.
Honestly, it's been an amazing, amazing session. I think honestly, it's been more than insightful, in depth, very qualitative, like Hilary said, and I'm just a lot to take in, honestly. Like if I wish something like this, I wish I knew about something like this when I was in year 12, year 13. Honestly, it would have completely altered my thought of thinking, but I think very pleased, very, very pleased.
Okay, that's great.